Imagine a killer so brazen, he didn't just murder, he performed. A Hollywood hopeful, butchered with surgical precision. A crime scene so horrifying, even seasoned detectives vomited at the sight. Her body posed like a broken doll. Her smile carved into a permanent scream. And a taunting question left to rot in history's gutters. Who is the Black Dahlia, and why did her killer never pay? This isn't just a cold case. It's a nightmare America can't wake up from. Because the truth, it's worse than the legends. January 1947. Los Angeles wears its post-war glamour like a mask. The smog hangs low, blending with the glow of neon. But beneath the promises of sunshine and stardom, this city hides secrets. Dark ones. Then, on a frostbitten morning, a mother walking her child to school stops cold. There, in a weed-choked lot on Norton Avenue, a scene ripped from a nightmare. The body of a young woman, cut clean in two, laid bare for the world to see. Her skin pale as wax, her hair jet black and tangled, and her face frozen in a smile that wasn't a smile. A blade had carved it ear to ear. Her name was Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old waitress who wrote letters about becoming a star. But the newspapers wouldn't use her real name. They called her the Black Dahlia, a nickname borrowed from a film noir, a title that turned her tragedy into a spectacle. The police arrived, tough, weathered men who'd seen war and gangland bloodshed. Yet even they stumbled back, retching. This wasn't just murder. It was art. The killer had drained her body of blood, scrubbed her skin raw, and posed her limbs with chilling precision. A message? A ritual? Or pure, unfiltered madness? Then came the taunts. Letters mailed to the press, signed with a smirk. Here's Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow. Inside, her birth certificate, photos, even an address book, with names meticulously cut out. The killer wasn't hiding. He was performing. 75 years later, we still don't know his name. Was it a scorned lover? A surgeon with a scalpel and a god complex? Or a monster hiding in plain sight, cloaked by power and privilege? The case files are littered with dead ends, burned evidence, and rumors of a cover-up that reeks of old Hollywood rot. But the darkest secret isn't just who killed Elizabeth Short. It's why her story refuses to die. Why we still see her face in the flicker of old film reels. Why her ghost lingers in every shadowy alley, every unanswered question. Because the Black Dahlia isn't just a victim. She's a mirror. And what stares back is our own obsession with the monsters we can't name. This is where the mystery begins, and where justice ends. Before the headlines, the horror, and the nickname that erased her humanity, there was a girl named Elizabeth. Born in 1924, in the quiet streets of Boston's Hyde Park. A child of the Great Depression, she grew up chasing fragments of a fractured American dream. Her father, Cleo, vanished one day after faking his suicide, leaving the family destitute. Elizabeth, just a teenager, developed a bleeding lung condition. Doctors said sunlight might heal her, so she fled to California, chasing cures, and eventually cameras. This was Bet to her friends, a young woman who wrote poetry, adored Frank Sinatra, and tucked gardenias into her raven hair. She dreamed of stardom, but Hollywood didn't want actresses, it wanted illusions. So she waitressed. She flirted. She borrowed money for bus tickets and cheap motel rooms. She wrote letters to her mother, Dorothy, filled with half-truths. I've met important people here. Don't worry about me. But the truth? Elizabeth was always one missed paycheck from oblivion. Men fell for her, soldiers, bartenders, married doctors. She craved love, but it slipped through her fingers like smoke. One fiancé died in the war. Another left her for a socialite. She'd whisper to friends, "I'm bad luck." Yet she kept smiling, kept wearing red lipstick and pristine white gloves, as if playing a role in her own tragic film. Then, in her final weeks, something shifted. She vanished for days, reappearing with bruises. She begged a friend, "I need to get out of LA." But where could she go? Her father's abandonment, her mother's quiet shame, her own hunger to be seen, they all anchored her to this city. Was her death a twist of fate? Or a price paid for trusting the wrong man in a town where power wore a suit and a sneer? Elizabeth wasn't a Black Dahlia. She was a girl who wrote in her diary about wanting a home, who sewed her own dresses, who laughed too loudly and loved too easily. But in the end, Los Angeles didn't want her light. It devoured her and turned her into a myth. So ask yourself, was her killer a stranger, or the culmination of every door that ever slammed shut in her face? January 15th, 1947. Dawn breaks over Los Angeles, cold and gray. A mother walks her child to school, cutting through a vacant lot on Norton Avenue. She's humming a tune to calm the boy, her breath visible in the air. Then she freezes. A pale shape glows in the weeds, too smooth to be trash. Too still. She steps closer and screams. There, sprawled in the dirt, lies a woman's torso. Pale as marble, drained of every drop of blood. Her legs are gone, severed clean at the waist. Her arms are raised above her head, posed like a macabre ballet dancer. But the face is worse. Her lips are carved ear to ear, twisted into a grotesque smile. A Glasgow grin, they'd call it, a signature of savagery. This is Elizabeth Short, or what's left of her. Police arrive within minutes. Hardened men, veterans of war and gangland slayings. But this makes them stagger. One detective vomits into the weeds. Another crosses himself. The body has been scrubbed spotless. No fingerprints, no dirt, not even a speck of blood. The cuts are surgical, precise. This isn't rage. It's craftsmanship. Then the second horror. 6 blocks away, another discovery. Elizabeth's lower half, discarded like garbage. Her legs are splayed, her intestines tucked neatly beneath her hips. The killer didn't just murder her. He staged her, as if the world were his gallery and Elizabeth his masterpiece. But the nightmare isn't over. 3 days later, the Los Angeles Examiner gets a call. A man's voice, calm and smug. You'll find Dahlia's belongings at the bus terminal. Inside a package. Elizabeth's birth certificate, photos, even a suitcase she'd carried. And a note typed with chilling precision. Here it is. Letter to follow. The press pounces. Headlines scream. Butcher of Black Dahlia strikes again. The killer watches, thrilled. He sends another letter, this time Elizabeth's address book. But there's a catch. Every name is cut out, leaving only jagged holes. A taunt. A game. He's toying with detectives, dangling clues that lead nowhere. The LAPD scrambles. They chase over 150 suspects. A drifter confesses, then laughs. He's a fraud. A surgeon's tools match the cuts, but he has an alibi. Then a bombshell. A hotel clerk swears Elizabeth entered the lobby with a well-dressed man days before her death. He called her Beth, the clerk says. He wore a pinstriped suit, looked important, but the sketch goes nowhere. Weeks pass. The killer mails one final letter. A map of LA, circled locations, and the words, please turn TO page 134. A reference to a medical textbook about genital mutilation. The police dismiss it as another hoax. But was it? Or was it a confession, buried in plain sight? Panic grips the city. Women arm themselves. Fathers padlock doors. The LAPD, desperate, turns to the occult, consulting psychics, scouring tarot cards. Nothing works. Leads dry up. Evidence vanishes. Rumors spread. A cop burned crucial files. A politician's son was shielded. The truth? The longer the case festers, the darker the whispers grow. Forensic experts, decades later, would call it the birth of modern profiling. The killer wasn't just violent, he was organized. He stalked. He planned. He enjoyed the spotlight. He knew how to clean a crime scene, how to manipulate the press. He might have been a doctor, a cop, a journalist, someone who understood power, and how to wield it without getting caught. But why Elizabeth? Was it random? Or did he know her? Her loneliness, her trust, her dreams? Did he see her as the perfect canvas for his rage? A woman no one would fight for? The answers died with him. If he died at all. 75 years later, the files gather dust. Detectives still get tips. A deathbed confession, a DNA match, a diary found in an attic. But every road leads to a wall. Elizabeth's case is a maze with no exit. A riddle written in blood. And somewhere maybe the killer's ghost still smiles. Because he didn't just take a life. He created a legend. One that turned Elizabeth Short into a cautionary tale. In a city of angels, even nightmares wear halos. But what if the nightmare isn't over? The Black Dahlia case didn't just haunt Los Angeles, it infected it. Like a virus, suspicion spread. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone had a theory. But the closer detectives got to the truth, the faster it slipped away. Witnesses clammed up. Evidence vanished. And the shadows grew darker. First, there was Dr. George Hodel, a wealthy physician with a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. His surgical skills matched the precision of Elizabeth's wounds. He hosted parties for artists, poets, and underground filmmakers. Dark rumors swirled. His own son would later accuse him, claiming he heard screams in the basement. But when police raided his home, they found nothing. Hodel smirked, lit a cigar, and said, "Gentlemen, you're wasting your time. Years later, secret recordings would catch him whispering, "Supposedly, I did the Black Dahlia." But by then, he was untouchable, a ghost in a silk robe. Then came Robert Manley, Elizabeth's ex-lover, a hot-tempered salesman who drove her to the Biltmore Hotel days before her death. He swore he dropped her off alive, but his alibi crumbled. He failed lie detector tests. He sobbed to cops, "I loved her, but under pressure, he cracked. Maybe I did it. I don't know. Was it guilt or madness?" The police let him go. He vanished into obscurity, a broken man haunted by a name he couldn't escape. But the most chilling suspect wasn't a doctor or a drifter. It was Leslie Dillon, a mortician's assistant who knew how to drain a body. He bragged about killing Elizabeth to his wife. When cops tracked him down, he sneered, "Prove it." They couldn't. His knowledge of embalming matched the killer's methods, but his arrogance outmatched their evidence. Then the whispers grew louder. Too loud. A powerful newspaper mogul's son was seen with Elizabeth weeks before her murder. His family owned the city's biggest tabloids, the same papers splashing her story. Cops allegedly buried the lead. A detective's notebook later surfaced with a scribbled name, underscore 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 underscore, shielded by dollar dollar dollar. The page was ripped out, but the rot went deeper. LAPD officers themselves fell under suspicion. One cop, known for brutality, was accused of burning evidence. Another, a forensic expert, kept Elizabeth's belongings as souvenirs. Worst of all, a witness claimed she saw Elizabeth alive days after her reported death, with a man in a police uniform. The report was lost. Then came the darkest theory of all. The killer wasn't a stranger. He was someone Elizabeth trusted. Someone who promised her a role, a job, or a ride home. Someone who knew how to clean a crime scene, manipulate the press, and vanish into the chaos. A surgeon? A reporter? A cop? Or a man with enough money to buy silence? The files are riddled with dead ends. A hotel clerk who identified a suspect, found dead of an overdose. A cab driver who claimed to drive Elizabeth to a mansion, disappeared overnight. Even Elizabeth's own address book, mailed by the killer, had names cut out, as if someone rich, someone connected, had been erased. Was it a cover-up? The LAPD denied it. But in 1949, the entire case file was burned. Officially, it was an accident, but former cops confessed, "We were ordered to destroy it." Why? To protect the guilty? Or to bury the department's shame? Decades later, a photo surfaced. Elizabeth laughing at a bar, surrounded by men in suits. One face was scratched out. A historian claimed it matched a notorious gangster linked to City Hall. But the man died in 1953, taking his secrets to the grave. Then, in 2013, a bombshell. A retired detective claimed his father, an LAPD cop, was the killer. He described a man twisted by rage who kept trophies from his victims. But with no evidence, it became just another ghost story. So why does the web of deceit still choke this case? Because Los Angeles in 1947 was a city of masks. Gangsters ran the clubs. Cops took bribes. Movie stars partied with mobsters. And a young woman like Elizabeth? She was disposable. The perfect victim in a town where money buried sins and power wrote the rules. The truth might be simpler and uglier than we think. Maybe the killer wasn't a genius. Maybe he just had friends in high places. Maybe he's in these case files, grinning from a mugshot, protected by a system that valued reputation over justice. Or maybe he's still out there, an old man flipping through newspapers, savoring the chaos he created. Because after 75 years, the Black Dahlia isn't a cold case. It's a crime scene, and we're still standing in it. The question isn't who killed Elizabeth Short. It's who didn't. Los Angeles, January 1947. Two things exploded after Elizabeth Short's murder: panic and headlines. Newspapers didn't just report the crime, they feasted on it. The LA Examiner offered $1,000 for scoops. The Herald Express plastered her face daily. But they weren't chasing justice. They were selling nightmares. And in the process, they erased the real Elizabeth Short forever. Here's how it began. Reporters swarmed the crime scene, snapping photos of her mutilated body. Those images never ran, but the hint of them did. "Beauty butchered in blood-soaked tragedy," screamed the Examiner. Editors knew gruesome sold papers, but they needed something juicier than murder. They needed a character, so they invented one. Elizabeth became the Black Dahlia, a nickname stolen from a 1946 film noir she'd never seen. They called her a party girl, a manicurist for mobsters, a mistress to married men. None of it was true. Elizabeth waitressed at a cafeteria. She wrote poetry. She wore red lipstick because it was cheap, but the truth didn't sell. So they twisted her letters, her friendships, her struggles into a pulp fiction script. She dated 75 men in 6 months. One paper lied. Her diary reveals sex obsession, another claimed. There was no diary, no proof. Just ink-stained men in smoky rooms, spinning stories for nickels. Even her death became a punchline. Cartoons depicted her ghost haunting Hollywood. Ads used her face to sell soap. Don't let tragedy dull your beauty. But the worst offender? The killer himself. He sent letters to the press, and they printed them, word for word. Here's Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow. They gave him a megaphone, turning a psychopath into a celebrity. Circulation numbers soared. The Examiner's phone rang off the hook. Readers demanding updates, clues, drama. Elizabeth's murder wasn't news anymore. It was a serialized thriller, and America couldn't look away. This wasn't just gossip. It was the birth of something darker. A true crime obsession that turned victims into villains and killers into antiheroes. Before the Dahlia, murder reporting was grim but straightforward. After, it was entertainment. The public craved gore, scandal, and moral decay. Newspapers fed it, radio amplified it, and Hollywood cashed in. But Elizabeth's family paid the price. Reporters stalked her mother, Dorothy, demanding answers to questions like, "Did you raise a prostitute?" Dorothy, a frail woman who cleaned offices for a living, collapsed under the weight. She begged, "Please let my daughter rest." They didn't. The frenzy warped the investigation, too. Cops leaked false leads to reporters to smoke out the killer. It backfired. Over 500 people falsely confessed, craving their 15 minutes of fame. One man even married a woman in exchange for exclusive details about the murder. It was all lies. And when the headlines faded, the damage was done. Elizabeth's real story, her dreams, her loneliness, her humanity, was buried. In its place, a myth, a warning, a cheap Halloween costume. The Dahlia became shorthand for fallen woman, a trope used to sell papers, movies, and moral panic. But the tragedy didn't stop with her. The media's Dahlia playbook became a blueprint. In 1957, when Ed Gein butchered women in Wisconsin, reporters called him the real-life psycho, a movie tagline, not a monster. When Sharon Tate was murdered in 1969, tabloids focused on her Hollywood connections, not her pain. The pattern repeated, victim first, human last. Even today, true crime podcasts dissect Elizabeth's case over wine tastings. Documentaries zoom in on her corpse photos, calling it artistic. TikTokers mock up Dahlia-inspired makeup tutorials, the hashtag Black Dahlia trending beside dance challenges. We've become the very audience those 1947 editors craved, consumers of tragedy, hungry for the next dark fix. But here's what they stole from Elizabeth. Her favorite song was Pennies from Heaven. She loved vanilla milkshakes. She sewed her own dresses to save money. She wrote to her mom, "I'll make you proud one day." These truths don't fit the myth, so they're forgotten. The Dahlia case didn't just change crime, it changed us. It made us complicit. Every time we click a headline like "Sexy Killer's Shocking Secrets," or binge a show about serial killers with cool nicknames, we repeat 1947's sin. We turn real pain into popcorn, real people into plot twists. Elizabeth Short didn't just die. She was rewritten. A woman reduced to a metaphor, a meme, a warning about the darkness we pretend to fear, but can't stop craving. The real horror isn't how she died. It's how we remember her. 75 years, 150 suspects, 10,000 pages of theories, and yet nothing. The Black Dahlia case isn't a mystery. It's a funeral without a body, a question without an answer, a wound that refuses to scar. So why do we keep picking at it? What does this unsolved horror say about us? Let's start with the facts we don't have. The case files? Burned in 1949. A clerical error, the LAPD claimed. The killer's letters? Lost. The witnesses? Dead or silenced. Even Elizabeth's body disappeared, buried in an unmarked grave until fans paid for a headstone decades later. Here lies Elizabeth Short, victim of a tragic murder. No justice, just a footnote. But the theories? They multiply like rats. Books claim the killer was a doctor, a cop, a father. Podcasts dissect zodiac links, satanic cults, time-traveling killers. A 2006 film noir reimagines Elizabeth as a femme fatale, the very lie the press invented. Even the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit took a swing, calling the killer organized, calculating, and likely wealthy. But guesses don't close cases. The truth is, we're not looking for a killer anymore. We're chasing ghosts. Take Dr. Walter Bailey, a surgeon who lived blocks from the crime scene. His daughter swore he confessed on his deathbed, but his house was demolished. No evidence, no closure. Or Jack Anderson Wilson, a bartender who allegedly bragged about cutting up a girl. But he died in a police shootout before he could talk. Even H.H. Holmes' grandson was accused. 75 years later, and we're still throwing darts in the dark. But here's the darkest theory. What if we already know the killer? What if he's in the files, smirking from a mugshot, protected by a badge, a last name, or a fortune? A 2018 investigation claimed a corrupt LAPD cop framed innocent men to hide his own crimes. The proof? A retired detective's diary, filled with coded names and bribes. But the department won't reopen the case. Too late, too messy, too guilty. Yet the Dahlia's shadow stretches far beyond LA. She birthed the modern true crime industrial complex. Her case inspired the first murder memorabilia collectors, people who traded her crime scene photos like baseball cards. It launched careers of psychics who claimed to channel her spirit for cash. Even her severed corpse photo, leaked online, gets clicks to this day. We've turned her tragedy into content. But the real legacy isn't in books or documentaries. It's in our obsession, the way we dissect victims, glorify killers, and twist unsolved cases into games. Elizabeth's story taught us that mystery sells better than truth. That a dead woman's name can become a brand, Black Dahlia perfume, Dahlia-themed horror games, Dahlia hashtags, while the person behind it fades to dust. Her family begged for peace. Her sister, Virginia, spent her life pleading, "Let her rest." But we won't, because Elizabeth Short isn't a woman anymore. She's a Rorschach test, a blank screen where we project our fears, our biases, our hunger for chaos. The Dahlia isn't unsolved because the killer was clever. It's unsolved because we don't want it solved. Think about it. Solved cases have endings. They give answers. But the Dahlia? She's infinite. A story we can rewrite, season after season, with new suspects, new conspiracies, new lies. She's proof that we'd rather feast on questions than swallow the ugly truth. Sometimes monsters win. Sometimes justice fails. And sometimes the only thing left of a human being is a myth. So the next time you fall down a Dahlia rabbit hole, ask yourself, are you searching for her? Or are you chasing the thrill of the unsolved? The answer might haunt you more than the case itself. Because Elizabeth Short's legacy isn't a murder. It's a mirror. And what stares back is a world that loves a good mystery more than it hates a killer. Her name was Elizabeth. She loved gardenias. And she deserved better. Walk through Los Angeles today, and you'll feel her. In the flicker of a neon sign on Hollywood Boulevard. In the way shadows pool beneath park benches at midnight. In the ache of an unanswered question, hanging in the air like smoke. Who killed Elizabeth Short? 75 years have turned her into a ghost story. Tourists snap selfies at the Norton Avenue lot where her body lay. Podcasters theorize over lattes about surgical knives and secret affairs. Even the LAPD keeps a Dahlia file, collecting tips from psychics and true crime addicts. But Elizabeth? She's not here. Not really. All that's left are echoes. Her laughter, trapped in a 1946 voicemail recording, lost to time. The scent of gardenias she tucked into her hair, now just a line in a detective's notes. The letters she wrote to her mother, begging for a second chance, buried in an archive no one visits. We've built 1,000 theories on her grave, but we've forgotten her. Maybe the answer died in 1947, buried with a cab driver who took his secrets to the grave, or a cop who burned evidence in his backyard, or a wealthy surgeon who smirked as he sipped bourbon, whispering, "They'll never prove it." Or maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe the killer is still here. A nameless face in a crowd. A grandfather who chuckles when the Dahlia case airs on TV. A ghost in plain sight, hiding behind the one thing we'll never give Elizabeth, oblivion. But what if we're asking the wrong question? Not who killed her, but why we keep pretending we can solve it. Why we turn her tragedy into puzzles, podcasts, and parlor games. Maybe it's because we need the Dahlia to stay unsolved. She's our alibi, a distraction from the uncomfortable truth. Monsters don't lurk in shadows. They walk in sunlight. They always have. So tonight, when you turn off the lights, listen. To the creak of a floorboard. To the rustle of leaves against your window. Somewhere in that silence, Elizabeth's voice still whispers. Not as the Black Dahlia, a nickname she never chose, but as Bet, the girl who loved rainy days, who hated scrambled eggs, who dreamed of a home she never found. The world didn't fail her because it couldn't find her killer. It failed her because it never saw her. Not then, not now. We turned her into a cautionary tale, a metaphor, a myth. But myths don't bleed. They don't cry. They don't leave behind mothers who died clutching unanswered letters. The Dahlia case will never close, not because the truth is hidden, but because we've replaced it with something darker. Something we crave more than justice, a story that never ends. So let's stop lying. Let's stop pretending we want answers. Let's just say her name. Elizabeth. Not Dahlia. Not a headline. Not a ghost. Say it before the wind steals that too. Elizabeth. Her name was Elizabeth.